So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 8:31. I'd ask everybody to rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, first order of business is our oath of office for our newly elected board members. So I'd ask Lori, we'll start with you. If you could just raise your right hand, repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of the Byram Hills School District Board of Education member
of the office of the Byram Hills Board of Education. What'd you say?
Member for the term of 3 years, according to the best of my ability.
For the time of 3 years, according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yay, Lori.
Congratulations, Lori.
Kelly, that's a mouthful for somebody who probably hasn't had a full cup of coffee yet.
That's true. And then Ira, please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of the Byram Hills School District Board of Education member
of the office of the Byram Hills School District Board of Education member
for the term of 3 years, according to the best of my ability.
for a term of 3 years, according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 4.2, I'll ask for a nomination for the Board of Education president.
So moved.
Second.
I nominate Ira Schulman.
Second.
I move the nominations be closed.
Second.
Second that.
Second.
Okay. Kelly, ask for a vote on the closing of nominations, please.
Vote on the closing of nominations.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes. Congratulations.
No, now you have to vote. And now you have to vote to actually elect the president. So all those in favor of electing Ira Schulman as board president, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. For vice president, I nominate Mia DiPietro.
Second.
Second.
I move that the nominations be closed.
Second.
Aye.
Second.
All in favor of closing nominations?
Aye. Aye.
All in favor of Mia DiPietro for vice president? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Congratulations and thank you.
You're welcome.
and then the oath of office. Ira, if you'll repeat after me, it may sound familiar. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York,
I do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Byram Hills Central School District Board of Education president.
whoa, and I
That
will
was long.
faithfully discharge
The
the
duties
office- duties of the Byram Hills Board of Education, Byram Hills School District Board of Education president
for the term of 1 year, according to the best of my abilities.
for the term of no more than 1 year to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think
And
we're
then
going to replay that maybe.
he added a word there. And then
Yeah.
Mia,
Not fair.
if you just raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York,
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of the Byram Hills School District Board of Education Vice President
of the office of the Byram Hills School District
Board of Education Vice
Board of
President,
Education Vice President,
for the term of 1 year according to the best of my ability.
for the term of 1 year, to the best of my abilities.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mayor.
Mia, were you
Thank
thinking you were going to say only in there, but then you didn't, like Ira?
No.
That wasn't part of it. Thank you.
Okay.
Turn it over to Ira.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Before we begin with item 5 on the agenda, just one last major shout out and thank you to Scott for his service as Board of Education President for the past 2 years.
You're welcome. Congrats to both of you.
Okay. Mr. Coltonecker, do we have any public comments at this time?
No, we do not.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to revise and adopt the annual organization agenda, items 7 through 9.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please? Aye. Okay. All right. Now, may I have a motion, please, to adopt 7.1, the annual organizational appointments by the Board of Ed for the 2021 school year?
So moved.
Second, please. Any discussion? All in favor, please? Aye.
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 Motion, please, to readopt all the board policies as shown in item 8 of the Board of Education agenda.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please? Aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion, please, to adopt the resolutions 9.1, approving the designation of Board of Education members to appoint impartial hearing officers for special ed hearings effective July 1, 2020, and to authorize settlement by Director of Special Services in consultation with the Superintendent of Schools of due process claims effective July 1, 2020. A motion, please.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please? Aye. Okay. Revision and adoption of consent agenda. Okay. May I have a motion, please, to revise and adopt the consent agenda for personal, special services, and business, which on the agenda are items 10, 11, 12, and 13.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please? Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to amend tonight's agenda, this morning's agenda by adding item 15.2, new business air conditioning.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
please. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That gets us to item 14.1, Byram Hills Return to School Plan for 2021 update, and I turn to our esteemed superintendent.
Okay, so thank you. Tim Kaltenecker and I have been working very hard on our e-learning and return to school plans, as have everyone else in the district at this point, including our board. We do know that we have been looking at 4 different plans for the return to school, not yet receiving any news from the governor or New York State Education Department as to the path that our state is going to be taking. That said, we have looked at New Jersey plans, Connecticut, Massachusetts plans for our close neighbors. We started this discovery method by looking at Missouri, Maryland, a bunch of other places, even looking at institutions and how they're returning, like Johns Hopkins. And we're starting to see more institutions on a daily basis. Harvard, I think, taking 40% of their kids, they're assuming. And I think Yale taking 60 or more percent of their kids back. Many universities trying to put things into place as our way. So we're learning from our neighbors in the meantime. And one thing that we know that we can do is to look at the learning plans for kids coming back in the fall. So as you remember from our presentations in the past, we have multiple groups, either task committees, task force, or subcommittees that are working on specific elements of the 4 different return to school plans. So Tim has been doing the lion's share of the work with our task forces, as everyone knows only Tim could do. And he is going to sort of explain their journey. He's going to take us into the mud pit, and he's going to show us what are a bunch of different schedules that people have been working on. What is our thinking about this right now? And of course, none of this has been established or set in stone, but I think it's really good for full disclosure for everyone to see the thought process involved. So I turn it over to Tim if you want to start sharing.
A few slides to share, which will get into some of the deep stuff that we're doing. We can also talk about the big picture, which is looking at the curriculum, which is the what of teaching. We're looking at the instructional models, and we're looking at schedules that drive our instruction. So I want to dive into schedules and frame this as concepts. It's like a company that designs a concept car. There's some really cool features about it, but we know it can't be driven on the road yet because there's things either missing or that don't work. So that's what these schedules are. They're big idea concepts. We're in a loop of getting feedback right now, and hopefully over the next 2 weeks, we'll settle on a schedule that we can start test driving. So that's sort of our time frame. So let me share a few slides to show you some of the work that we're doing. Let me get to this one. And I think it should be sharing in a second. Is that it? Do you have it there? Someone can tell me. Yes. Okay. So just want to review a few things that I've been doing with the task forces. We have a K-5 task force and a 6-12 task force. We do recognize that it won't be business as usual in the fall, but our goal is to create normalcy. So in terms of our structures and systems, so that there's predictability. That will help our students, it will help our faculty and our families as we go forward. Some of the curricular priorities, we have some guiding questions. First and foremost is keeping our students safe and healthy in all of our schedules and our routines. We want to create a strong sense of community and that strong sense of relationships between teacher and students amongst themselves. We also want our learning experiences, our instruction to be highly engaging in the curriculum, yet we recognize we have to maintain the high standards of Byram Hills. We're looking at the right size curriculum, knowing that things won't be normal coming back. So what are the priorities in our curriculum? And then how do we foster this collaboration amongst everyone in our community? So those are some of the driving questions that are guiding our curriculum work. We do know that we may remain committed to the district mission, and that's a focus of ours as well in all of our plans. We do have the 4 scenarios which you're familiar with, and we reviewed these 4 scenarios with our task forces. In the design of our schedules, we're focusing on scenario 1 and 4. We believe those should transition nicely, that all of these scenarios should be able to cross platforms. That is our goal. 1 and 4, we are developing right now that these schedules can transition between all students in or all students engaged in e-learning. Scenario 2 has more challenges if we can only bring in a percentage of students, and we're going to deal with that after we settle on a schedule for 1 and 4. But ultimately driving us is that we have to be able to shift direction at any point in time. So it needs to make sense for teachers, it needs to make sense for kids, it needs to make sense for our families. So again, the workforce, we have our K-5 and 12 task force that meet regularly. It's teachers and administrators. They then turnkey information to subcommittees who then report out to grade levels and departments. And then feedback is brought back to the subcommittees and back to the task force. And then the task forces, along with the district office and the principals and our operations committee, are constantly communicating. So there's lots of communications that's happening on a regular basis, and a lot of moving parts in this. I'll give you a little bit of information from the parent survey. So we closed the parent survey last week. I have some researchers analyzing it now. We should have some summary results by the end of the week, although we are reading it. I know Jen and Gina and I have read through much of the comments, but we're getting someone to formally give us some analysis of it. A few things that I thought were interesting is just where the survey data came from. We had 655 parent surveys representing about 795 students. And this is where the students fall. So you could see it's heavily in the Coman Hill and Wampus with students there in the survey data. Also, I thought it was interesting as we're thinking about schedules, we asked the question if a schedule that provides flexibility is helpful. And 2/3 of families said that they prefer a schedule that's flexible, while about 18% did not agree with that statement. So it is a little bit of our dilemmas, how we provide some flexibility, but also some structure at the same time. And that's what we're working with. And I was somewhat surprised by when parents feel their child is most productive, which is in the morning hours. I feel like if I asked the same survey to kids, we might get a little bit of a different answer. But I was curious about that. Anyway, parents want their kids to be productive in the morning, I think. That's when they're productive. Some considerations in our schedule design, that it has daily routines and there's consistency across all of the 4 scenarios, that we have a scheduled contact time with teacher and students, that it has purposeful interactions during that contact time, requiring attendance. We are working on a requirement for attendance. That was feedback we heard from families and from teachers, and that we have a systematic way for feedback and grading in our system. We recognize that blended learning will be part of what we're doing regardless of what scenario we're in. That part of our curriculum needs to live online, and that we must be able to switch easily between these scenarios. So I'm going to go into some high school concepts. These, again, are big picture concepts that we brought to the task forces, and we're getting feedback on these schedules now. There are 5 schedules that Chris Walsh put forward, and a lot of the work is building on the previous 2 years. He's been doing some master schedule work. So one of the schedules is what was his intended schedule for 2 years out that we were starting to work toward. So schedule 1 is called the A-Day Odd Even block. This is where we alternate. It's a block schedule, so you have 4 of the 8 periods every day. One day is odd day, the odd periods, and the next day would be the even periods. Give you a sense of what that looks like. This is the odd day, where you'd start the morning with office hours to sort of just bring some structure and calm to the day, and also for kids to be able to ask questions in the morning. And then go through periods 1 and 3 in the morning and 5 and 7 in the afternoon. The even day would flip. It would be 2-4, then 6-8. And having an hour block, which kids would rotate through lunch periods, office hours, or study sessions. That gets us into somewhat of a common lunch block, but kids could be doing different things during those periods. I think this could work in school in the sense that there's not a lot of transition time. The idea of a block schedule slows down the transitions of kids walking around. So that was one of our thoughts in terms of the feedback from operations. So that's where we think this schedule could work well in managing who's in the cafeteria eating during those 3 different periods. We also think a schedule like this could work in the remote setting as well with these longer blocks. We have 80 blocks of minutes of time, so you could really go deep with curriculum. Then there's the triple drop, which is we call the Byram drop. This is the schedule that Chris was moving toward with the high school faculty in a block type of schedule. So it's somewhat of a modified block. Periods are still longer than normal, but they're not 80 minutes. They're down to 65 minutes. And we have 5 periods per day. And classes would meet 5 times over an 8-day cycle. So to see what that would look like, again, starting the morning with an extra help and study session was a lot of feedback we've been getting on our committees from kids and from teachers. And then having 5 periods in a day with a universal lunch. In school, there's more transition than the previous schedule, so that's one bit of a concern. It's also what do we do when we have all students in that lunch block? So the 45-minute lunch period, and how do we transition 800 kids through the cafeteria? So that gives us a little bit of nervousness for in-person, although we do think it could be a good schedule for blended learning. Then we are looking at one of our Challenge Success Partner schools. St. Andrew's Episcopal School has an interesting schedule as well, which is a rotating schedule, a 5-day schedule. They only have 7 periods. We would have to add an 8th period for our schedule, and class periods are only 45 minutes. So to give you a sense of this, again, this isn't ours. This is their schedule, which wouldn't be modification if we were to go down this path. What we like about this schedule is it's very simple. It purposely starts every class on the hour, which is easy to implement. What we would need to rearrange is every day looks different and can be confusing in terms of kids remembering what 9 o'clock class they have. We also have to be cautious in rotating classes that normally take place in the morning with the afternoon, because we have shared faculty with the middle school. So we have to keep morning classes in the morning and afternoon classes in the afternoon so that we don't have conflicts with our middle school schedule. So this would need some arrangement should we start to explore this concept. Then critical about the very first Byram Hill schedule called the module schedule. There are 18 modules lasting 12 minutes each. And Chris somehow in his head understands how this would work. Nobody else does yet, but it is something to consider of how we can arrange and be flexible with times. He thinks this could be an interesting schedule for blended, where you might say modules 1 and 3 are going to be for my chemistry class. And we could allot modules of time based on how much time you need with kids. This would take a lot of conceptual work on building a master schedule from, but he wanted to put it out there for some feedback. And then our math teachers finally came up with their own department schedule, which is similar to the odd even, but putting in some planning time, a day where it's extra help for half a day for students based on department, where kids could go and do one-on-one meetings, which could work whether we're in person or blended, work with office hours. And the other time is teachers managing the blended learning component and doing some work on blended learning. I think in school, those mornings, that Wednesday schedule, we would have to be very cautious with where kids are traveling and what they're doing during that time. So that would be a concern of this concept. So those are the high school schedules. They're big concepts. We're reviewing what is best about these schedules and coming up with a concept that may in the best way for us that could be in person and blended and be simple for students, yet give us really high leverage in terms of our instructional priorities. Middle school schedule, worked with the committee. Kim and Angelo worked with teachers on developing a schedule. They have one that they're getting feedback on now. This is also going with the block schedule and using the team time. So the schedule around the teams is designed in a way around blocks already. So we want to capitalize on that, but also do an A-B block. So one day it could be an A day, where you would have your 2 core academics plus callback, or in 6th grade, you also have that 5th academic. So you would switch academics every other day, giving you longer blocks to be able to go more deeply into the content, also recognizing teachers may be socially distanced and be toggling between 2 classrooms. It gives time so you're not rushing over a small amount of time, but could really get kids settled and get them into some deep learning while you gave some direct instruction to half the class, and then go to the other class and give direct instruction while kids work independently or collaboratively. So this has the 2 academic periods every other day. Should we shift, this would be in person, should we shift to a blended environment, a remote environment, the concept might be to keep that schedule Monday through Thursday, but then have every class meet on Friday with extra help or synchronous sessions or some targeted learning, so that teachers are seeing each class 3 times a week instead of just 2 in a block schedule. That's the issue with a block schedule is, you might have a class that's only meeting 2 times a week, and we don't think that's enough. What I also like about the middle school schedule is they're building in an X period in their schedule at the start of the day and the end of the day, recognizing the needs of middle school students developmentally, get kids into the building, get them settled. There may be some challenges with people coming in and kids feeling ill and having to deal with some of that. So we want to slow the day down, let them check in their homeroom so they're not rushed. Make sure kids are organized for the day, go through the day, and then follow up with them at the end of the day to make sure that they understood everything from that day and they're prepared for the next day's work. We think that X period was a really interesting concept that we're still figuring out exactly the details of how to manage that. And then finally, WAMPUS schedule, we're looking at something like this. The teachers are already at the elementary level, K-5. This is for K-5. I'll give you an example of 3rd grade. They already think in terms of blocks. They do have periods just so we can schedule the specials, but they think in terms of blocks of time for ELA and for math. So we would group the courses like this. So you have that double block of ELA and that double block of math, sort of building on the middle school model. You still have this long period of time where you could do some direct instruction with some of the students and then circulate through small groups for direct instruction, answering questions, and while students then work independently or in groups and explore. And it would sort of be a rotation through your various small groups throughout the day. In transitioning to remote learning, what we are thinking about is moving the academics to the morning. So we can't do that in school because of where the specials fall, but we could do that during remote learning. That would put the academics in the morning where we think the kids might be the most alert and ready to learn, and then building in the specials, the extra help, the academic intervention services at the end of the day. And that's the concept we're looking at right now. So those are a bunch of schedule considerations. At the same time, we're looking at an adaptive web-based assessment system. Today and tomorrow, we have some vendors giving us some giving us an overview of their products. We'll look at those products. We do feel that we need some diagnostic assessments as students come in that are universal across grades. We feel like we need some interim benchmarks across the year, say 3 times a year, where we're giving an assessment, which will give us feedback, and possibly some summative assessments during this time. So we have some data on kids' development and growth at appropriate grade levels. And these programs can both be normed, both national and local norms. Also in our curriculum, we're looking and training on the investigations electronic resources, so teachers can teach from the electronic resources in our math program. And also our literacy framework that we've been exploring and looking to pilot is beginning to put their materials digitally. And we're thinking about the digital component as well as how we get hard copy books in the hands of kids on a regular basis. So we are looking at things like grab and go kits that kids could have at home or take with them should we close, both for math and for literacy. So kids actually have materials and books and manipulatives that they can use at home. We're also looking at some blended learning frameworks. I've showed you these slides before. We're basing it on a research-based model of community of inquiry framework, which talks about the social presence, the cognitive presence, and the teaching presence. So we're studying it and putting together a framework about how teachers can achieve that through their instruction with kids and what tools they can use to do so. So this is a process that's currently in development where teachers are thinking about that instruction, whether it's in person or whether it's synchronous. We're also looking at some other models. This is one model where it goes through these 8 different stages of an assignment where you engage kids, you explore the content, they explain it, they apply it, etc. And that to the assessment piece. And one more instructional framework is the 5 E's, a similar approach, but it gives a very concrete way to think about these different elements of high-level student engagement in learning. That's just more details of the 5E. And so that's a pretty quick overview of the types of things we're doing at the task force meeting. I think one of the most important is that schedule that will drive our learning structures.
Tim,
concepts. Yes.
Tim, it seems to me you've done about a year's worth of work in 3 weeks. This is just an enormous amount of volume to process, conceptually and data driven. So what are your next steps? How are you going to go about forming this into a cohesive plan? I mean, it's just a lot of data.
So we're on a cycle. We meet weekly with the task forces, and then the task forces meet with the subcommittees, and then that feedback comes back to us on a regular basis. We have a retreat with the administrators next week, which we're planning. So this information will come to the retreat where we'll work through more of the details. I'm hoping in 2 weeks, we'll have a concept of a schedule that we start developing the details around and start thinking about how that's implemented. So it's a lot of work with a lot of teachers putting in time over the summer and a lot of our administrators. So,
you know, there's that expression, a lot of moving parts. It seems this really is this is what it is. You have an enormous number of moving parts, and the principals are all actively involved in this.
All the principals are involved. The principals are members of the task force. So in addition to being part of the task force, they meet with subcommittees and they meet with Jen and Gina and I on a weekly schedule as well. So that it's just constant iteration of where we are each step of this. So even though we meet once a week as a task force, there's about 15 conversations and other meetings happening in between those meetings, which further the work along. Because we have to push it pretty quickly.
Comments, questions from the board?
Just one question, Tim. In terms of cohorting, where do you think it's feasible to cohort and where is it not feasible to cohort? Because it sounds like from what experts are saying, the more you can cohort, the better.
I would say the easiest place is the elementary level, also with middle school, keeping those kids together. Thus, the block schedule is something we're really driven to because you could take a teacher's class, divide it into 2, and keep those 2 separate from each other. and keep those kids rotating through their specials, through the lunch periods, and any movement. The high school will probably be our biggest challenge in terms of cohorts. So that we're grappling with that piece. Thus, we're trying to get a schedule that is as simple as possible with as little movement when we're in person as possible.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a quick question, Tim. I know you talked about staff and faculty to support them going from building to building. Is there a way to prevent staff from having to do that? I know we do support, they just to keep everyone in their buildings, and if that will help, in terms of any outbreaks and things like that. That looking forward to that. Not looking forward to it, but just
Right. So you're talking about shared faculty.
shared
So
faculty, yeah.
people who might go down and teach a course at the middle school.
Hmm.
We haven't addressed that yet, but I think what we could look at is maybe that teacher could be working virtually if we don't feel we need them for the supervision of students, but it's something we have to consider in terms of our staffing needs. Obviously, we're being as efficient as possible. That is something to consider.
It's something to consider, and coming to the board if we need more staffing to prevent that from happening. I mean, that's something I think I would be supportive of, just to keep everybody working in their buildings.
Pass. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good
just
point.
keep that in mind.
Jen,
That's great work.
Jen, just hearing the obviously excellent work that Tim continues to do on this, do you see a need? Will you see a need for the board to meet more frequently this summer because of these issues? And if so, we should think about when we're gonna do that, just to make sure we can get maximum availability.
So Ira, we're supposed to be meeting every week. We have scheduled meetings where I do 3 mini sessions with the board.
I'm talking about a full board meeting for any action requirements.
Yeah, if we have to have an action item, we'll have to have a board meeting. And that won't come, unfortunately, probably until what would you say, Gina, middle of August, when we start to really see what kind of extra staffing we might need at that point. We still have a lot of time to wait for the governor, wait for New York State Ed. We're doing all the operational plans of reorganizing classes within the buildings for larger spaces. But what ultimately will also guide our staffing is what's happening to our current faculty and staff as we start to return to school. So I'm predicting that would look like the beginning and middle of August.
Well, when do you think is a reasonable time you think you'll start hearing from faculty about their availability, or maybe non-availability is more accurate, for the upcoming year?
I would assume by the beginning of August.
Yeah.
I think everybody's waiting for the governor to come out with what we're doing.
Do we know?
Go ahead, Scott, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Jen, do we know yet when the SED plan is due? Is there a firm due date, or is it still a little bit up in the air?
It's still up in the air. So if they are going to get to us by June 13th or 15th, some New York State Ed plan, and then they're going to look for us to turn plans around to them, I would imagine that's got to be the beginning to mid of August also.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why you're saying a meeting around then makes sense, because that plan would likely have to be ratified.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So the best thing for parents is to keep checking the Byram Hills website for updated information.
So I have principals coffees happening at the end of July and at the end of August at each building, where principals will talk about specific information with parents, and they will likely record those sessions so they could send it out to their buildings proper. We have stakeholder meeting groups happening a bunch of times this summer to look at these schedules and look at the information that's going to be disseminated. And other than that, I'll be attending these principals' coffees as well. And I'll see if there's a need to send out additional video to the district, which likely there will be, because remember, faculty and staff are not sitting in on all of those principals' coffees, although so many of them are really heavily involved in these processes, but it's good to get a global perspective. So likely I'll be sending out more videos.
Where do you think these coffees will be taking place?
They'll be virtual, I'm sure. Yeah. Because, at some of the buildings, I think one of the principals' coffees, remember I hosted 4 of them and I had over 550 people.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're
So
going
you could do it on the football field, maybe.
Yeah. But then I can't, I'll have to have a microphone because I can't.
Well, that's right.
I can't.
Okay. Any other board questions, comments, what have you on Tim's presentation? Tim, anything else you'd like to add to what you've said?
Just thanks to the board for the time to present this. for the-
Well,
for all the-
no thanks necessary, Tim. Thanks to you for this enormous volume of work you're turning out. It's so valuable to us, really. It's so
Thank you.
valuable.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. We go to new business, and as we noted, we amended the agenda to include item 15.2, air conditioning element. I'm going to ask Jen if she would please place out what she'd like the board to, what board action she's looking for here, please.
Right. So we originally had a rollout of air conditioning plans throughout the district. We have finished our Coman Hill air conditioning. The next building to address was Wampus Elementary School. We put those projects on hold at the outset of COVID, just to make sure that we weren't, doing any kinds of projects, and we were watching our finances very conservatively. At this point, with the concept that kids, with the American Academy of Pediatrics requesting that all kids come back to school, knowing that kids will likely be coming back masked in some capacity, teachers will definitely be masked, and staff. We believe that there's a real calling for us putting these air conditioning units in schools. We would like to fully air condition Wampus, as was our plan and as we have the funds for already. We would also like to air condition 2 upstairs hallways, one at the high school and one at the middle school. Knowing what we know now about ventilation and probably our inability to be putting fans in these rooms, they're absolutely intolerable for our kids to be sitting in, particularly if they have to be masked. We have looked into our systems and installing MERV 13 filters in our systems, and also installing, which would be included in that amount, it's called the Global Plasma Solutions item, which has been used in the Mayo Clinic and has been used in some schools in the Michigan area. And this is to better filter out any pathogens. We've looked at that, and in addition to the spraying that we're going to be doing in the schools, we feel that this is a really necessary item for our kids and for our teachers for the potential return to school at this point. We'll still have
Okay.
areas that aren't air conditioned. At Crittenden, we'll have 3 hallways that are not air conditioned, they're bottom floors, and at the high school, 3 hallways that are bottom floors. So over time, we would like to do that.
And Kelly, the funds for this will be coming from where, please?
The funds come from previous closed projects every year. So we did that around, I think, in January board meeting where we closed some old projects. So we have those funds available to use for this project.
And there will be no negative tax impact on the taxpayers, correct?
Correct.
Well, let's put a motion on the table, then we can discuss it further. May I have a motion, please, to authorize the superintendent to proceed with the full air conditioning of Wampus, the air conditioning of the 2 upper hallways in Crittenden and the high school, and the global plasma program, with the funds coming from the closed project funds as stated by Kelly?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Lori, thank you. Okay, further discussion from the board on this? Jen, this is your recommendation, correct?
Yes, and I also had communicated with Dr. Thomas Murray from Yale New Haven Children's Hospital, who is the acting director of pediatric immunology, and he talks about, of course, risks and benefits of air conditioning and the necessity to have moving air, which is what we're using in this guidance.
I would just note that Mia had to step off from the call for a moment, but she's authorized me to state to the board she is supportive of this motion as well. Scott,
I think the one comment I would make, and I understand that this is something over the long run that we want to do anyway, but it was originally in the plan. From the particulars of COVID-19, I just think it's important to state that it is very uncertain in terms of what the science really tells us about these systems. And I think that we've done everything we can, Jen and Kelly and others in the district, to learn as much as possible about best practices as they stand right now. But it is controversial. The science is shifting, and we'll have to continue, if we move forward this, to evaluate, what best practices are. But for every person that says air conditioning could help, there's someone else that points out risks of air conditioning. So it's a highly complex issue when it comes to COVID-19 prevention. That's all.
Okay, anything else from the board on this before we move forward? Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye, please, or raise your hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries. Jen, please report back to the board the next meeting on the progress on this.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to staff reports. Superintendent, what have you done for us lately?
We actually have no staff reports. I have two items though that I do not want to neglect. The first item is in the weeds right now, and on every one of these meetings, Brian Melso has been here. I want to take a few moments to recognize Brian. His work has been never ending, and every single thing that we have seen from Byram Hills, every celebration of children, every broadcasted board meeting, every superintendent's recorded message, all of those morning messages coming from the high school, every single piece of that has been done by one person. That's Brian Melso. I know that he has Gabby who's supporting him in the technology part of that component, but I just have to say that I am astounded by him at every turn. And I think that he is a born and bred Byram. He didn't go to school here as a youngster, but he lives it, eats it, and breathes it as your administrators do here. I just want to say a special thank you to Brian. You are top notch, cannot be matched. So
Brian,
thank you so much.
Brian, consider yourself a bobcat.
He's a bobcat. He is.
And we join in Jen in extending you our thanks for what you've done and what you will do to enable this the work we're doing to proceed smoothly. So thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for that, Jen. That was great.
He's amazing. And my last thing is, I know that Mia has left, but Ira, I would like to thank you for steering the ship for us this year as the president. This is now your 22nd year. Is that true,
Yes,
Ira?
it is true.
It's your 22nd year, and your children who I taught at one point are now grown adults. One of them is children. But you have a passion for Byram Hills that we all possess here, and we're so grateful to you for taking your personal time to continue to steer this community in the right direction.
Thank you very much, and I thank the members of the board for their confidence, and I thank Mia for stepping up to be vice president. But as we said last week or the week before, we all are pulling together.
Yeah.
And as a board in its entirety, we're very fortunate to have each other. Okay, any other staff reports from the central building, Jen?
No.
Okay. All right, board reports, president, being president for the last hour or so. I have not much more to report other than to say we are going to be looking at committees. So I think a list of committees was circulated recently. Please send to me your choices for committees, and we'll do our best to honor your requests. It's important work, obviously, so give it some thought. And if I don't hear from you in 2-3 weeks, I'll probably hound you for it. But please get to me what you're looking for, what you like to do in terms of committees and committee assignments. That's really what we have for board reports. Any topics for future agendas or RFIs that any board member wants to put on the table at this point?
The only thing I already mentioned on committees actually is that
Yes.
the BHEF, we had done, with this concept over the last couple of years of the rotation.
Yes.
Based on their bylaws, we do need to appoint 2 people to be the representatives like the old days on an ongoing basis. So just to keep that in mind. And then whenever we have the names, we can just provide it to them.
Okay, so we'll appoint 2 people as the pro forma representatives to the BHEF, subject anyway to our rotation plan.
Exactly.
All right, good. Thanks, Scott.
I have a quick question. I thought that they were going to amend their bylaws so that we could rotate. Right.
they discussed it and they decided they didn't want to because of a bunch of different reasons around publishing a list of board members and the continuity. And so they really felt strongly that they wanted 2 members for the year. Obviously, every year it could be 2 different people.
Okay, well, we will accommodate them within the confines of what we can do. All right, any communications to the board that anyone has? I have none to report. Approval of Board of Education minutes. May I have a motion, please, to approve the Board of Ed minutes of June 22nd, 2020?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
second. Any
Second.
discussion? Any corrections anybody wants to amend? All right, all in favor, please?
Aye.
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 All right, let the record reflect that at approximately 7:35 a.m. this morning, the board went into executive session to discuss the Board of Education matter, the superintendent's evaluation, and a district matter involving succession planning. Okay, with that said, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn this morning's meeting?
So moved.
Second, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you all. Enjoy your morning, and we'll be in touch soon. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.